We live behind glass and concrete, in curated environments, divorced from the wild rhythms that shaped us. Our lights drown out the stars. Our screens replace the fire. Our food comes wrapped in plastic, and the predators that once stalked us now only exist in documentaries and dreams. But not long ago, not even a blink in evolutionary time, we were something else. Creatures of instinct, shadows in the tall grass. 1 million years ago, our ancestors woke each day not with plans, but with hunger. They lived by the scent of the wind and the sound of movement in the dark. There were no gods, no borders, no clocks, only survival, strategy, and the slow, churning pressure of natural selection. And though their bones now sleep beneath layers of dust and ash, their story is not gone. It's etched into our biology, pulsing in our habits, fears, and compulsions. We are not the first version of ourselves. We are the latest draft of a species that has been dying and becoming for over 2 million years. 1 million years ago, the world was not ruled by humans. It tolerated them. No great cities stood. No words had yet been carved into stone. There were no histories, no names, no memory that could outlive the breath of the one who carried it. And yet, our ancestors walked the earth, beings of flesh and blood, who looked in the outline of their bodies startlingly like us. Homo erectus, the upright man, had spread far beyond the cradle of Africa, across grassy savannas, tangled woodlands, and mist-drenched river valleys. They moved through what is now Kenya, South Africa, Georgia, India, China, and even the volcanic islands of Indonesia. They were not alone in the world, but they were something new in it. Toolmakers, fire users, long-distance travelers with minds shaped not by instinct alone, but by memory, planning, and social learning. Their brains were smaller than ours, yet vast compared to their ancestors, hovering around 900 to 1100 cubic centimeters, nearing the threshold of symbolic thought. They had no language as we know it, but they had intention. Their hands gripped stone tools with precision. Their eyes scanned the horizon not just for danger, but for opportunity, for patterns in the seasons, for signs of prey, for the scent of fire or death. Their societies, though invisible to time, were likely small, mobile groups, bands of 20 to 50 individuals bound by necessity, perhaps by kinship, and certainly by shared struggle. These early humans had no concept of society or culture, but they built both in silence, passing on knowledge through imitation, raising infants communally, learning together to tame the land one flake of stone at a time. By 1 million years ago, the Acheulean tool tradition, first born over 1.7 million years prior, had become a defining feature of Homo erectus life. These weren't crude rocks. They were shaped with vision, symmetry, and purpose. Hand axes, cleavers, and flake tools were chipped and refined through complex knapping sequences, requiring foresight, fine motor skills, and knowledge passed across generations. A good hand axe could cut meat, split bone, scrape hide, dig tubers, and smash shellfish. Some tools bore over 100 precise flake removals, and yet, these tools were more than utility. They were the first glimpse of the human mind externalizing thought. Each one was a record of time, of decision, of care. Alongside these tools, fire began to flicker, literally and symbolically, into the human story. The earliest signs of controlled fire use come from around 1.5 million years ago, but by 1 million years ago, at places like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa and Gesher Benot Yaakov in Israel, hominins had begun gathering around flame with intention. They may not have been able to create fire, but they kept it, nurturing embers, transporting coals, feeding flames that gave warmth, protection, and light. Fire altered everything. It extended the day into night, allowed for cooking, which softened food, killed pathogens, and made digestion easier, and reshaped our biology. With cooked food, digestive tracts shrank, brains grew. Nighttime gatherings, lit by flame, may have been the earliest stages of ritual, memory, or social bonding. Around the hearth, language may have begun to form, gestures giving way to sounds, sounds to shared meaning to thought. The silence of the world began to crack. Their lives were brutally physical. The climate was unstable. fluctuating between warm interglacials and bitter ice ages. In Africa, heat and drought drove herds across the land, and with them went the humans, following elephants, wildebeests, and gazelle across valleys and plains. In colder Europe, species like Homo antecessor, possibly descended from Homo erectus, adapted to cooler forests and hunted red deer with sharpened wooden spears. Their diet was flexible, omnivorous, opportunistic. They hunted, yes, but they also scavenged, waiting for lions or saber-toothed cats to leave behind carcasses, then descending with stone tools to strip remaining flesh and crack bones for fat-rich marrow. This was not desperation, it was strategy. Some evidence suggests they could fish, gather shellfish, and even exploit plant resources like nuts, tubers, and fruits. In India and Southeast Asia, stone tool scatters show hominins spreading into fertile zones, rich in food and shelter, though fossil remains are rare. On the Indonesian island of Java, Homo erectus lived for over 1 million years, coexisting with giant turtles, crocodiles, and elephants. In places like the Sangiran Dome, skulls and postcranial bones show a creature robust and enduring, with strong limbs, thick bones, and heavy brow ridges. Alien in face, but human in movement. Their bodies were not brutish. They were engineered by evolution for survival, speed, and long-distance persistence. Their long legs, narrow hips, and sweat-based cooling system allowed them to outrun many prey animals in the heat. They hunted by exhaustion, tracking game for hours until it collapsed, a method impossible without social coordination and deep environmental knowledge. They experienced pain, fear, and possibly even grief. Fossils show injuries that healed over time, broken bones, damaged teeth, signs of disease, suggesting care, not abandonment. A toothless individual from Dmanisi, Georgia, dated to 1.8 million years ago, lived years without the ability to chew, implying others helped him eat. This kind of behavior isn't instinctual, it's social, it's emotional. It may be the evolutionary origin of empathy, but death was ever present. Life expectancy was short, perhaps 30 to 40 years at best. Child mortality was high. Infection, predators, malnutrition, and cold could end a life in days. They had no medicine, no healing herbs, no gods to pray to. When someone died, their body may have been left to scavengers or discarded into the forest. Burial was not yet born. The earliest graves, with ritual and care, wouldn't appear for another 600,000 years. And yet, somewhere in their brains, the seeds of awareness were germinating. They saw others die. They may have wondered, they may have mourned. There is no proof. But the evolutionary psychology suggests that by 1 million years ago, hominins were developing theory of mind, the ability to attribute thoughts, intentions, and feelings to others, and with it, the first faint echoes of self-awareness. Across the continents, different populations faced different paths. In East Asia, Homo erectus in China, the famous Peking man, lived in caves and left behind tools, fire evidence, and crushed bones, possibly gnawed by hyenas. Their lives were precarious. Predators still hunted them. They were not apex. In Europe, the cold kept populations scarce. Homo antecessor in Spain showed larger brains and more modern faces, but lived short, difficult lives. Evidence of cannibalism at the Gran Dolina site, including cut marks on bones of children, suggests dark survival behaviors, or perhaps early ritual. These were not stories of glory. They were stories of endurance. 1 million years ago, no one was watching. No one was writing it down. Yet every act, every hunt, every spark of fire, every child born, every stone flaked, was a line in the unrecorded scripture of humanity. These ancestors didn't know us. They never imagined a future, but we carry their bones, their minds, their fears. Our eyes are shaped by the same light they looked into. Our hands grip tools the way theirs once did. Our need for warmth, for group, for meaning. It was born there, in those shadowed valleys and firelit nights. They were not modern, but they were no longer beasts. They stood at the threshold. The world around them was wild, but something inside them, slow, silent, irreversible, was becoming us. Human 1 million years ago, Our ancestors' lives were defined by a relentless struggle to survive in a world where the boundary between life and death was measured in moments, where every breath, every movement, every shared glance could mean the difference between nourishment and starvation, safety and fatal injury. Homo erectus and related hominins lived in small, tightly knit groups whose survival hinged on cooperation, communication, and the gradual mastery of their environment. This foundational social structure, small bands cooperating to hunt, forage, and defend, was not a mere convenience but an evolutionary imperative encoded deep within our neurobiology. The cognitive machinery that allowed early humans to read intentions, build trust, and enforce social norms laid the groundwork for the complex societies millennia later. The neurological evolution of the prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions such as planning, impulse control, and social reasoning, began to facilitate an unprecedented level of group coordination and cultural transmission. Neural circuits that regulated empathy, fairness, and social bonding expanded under selective pressure, creating a species capable of complex social strategies beyond mere instinct. In these early groups, leadership was not an abstract concept, but a practical necessity. Individuals who demonstrated superior hunting skills, knowledge of the landscape, or the ability to mediate disputes naturally gained status and influence, setting the earliest forms of social hierarchy. These leaders shaped the distribution of resources and the defense of territory, their authority embedded in ritual displays of strength and trust cultivated through repeated interaction, a dynamic that would eventually evolve into formalized power structures from tribal chieftains to modern governments. Around shared fire pits, symbolic thought began to crystallize. Firelight extended waking hours, enabling storytelling, teaching, and the establishment of collective memory, embedding cultural knowledge into the fabric of community life. The dawn of symbolic behavior, burial practices, ritualistic toolmaking, and possibly early religious belief suggests that early humans were beginning to grapple with abstract concepts like mortality, fate, and the supernatural, signaling the birth of culture as a social adhesive. These cultural innovations created an evolutionary feedback loop where social complexity fueled brain development, which in turn enabled more sophisticated cultural transmission and social organization. As the bands grew and migrations pushed into new and harsher environments, Europe, Asia, and beyond, these social adaptations became more critical. The rudimentary barter of meat and tools morphed into systems of reciprocal exchange and proto-economies, where trust and reputation became as valuable as the resources themselves. This laid the embryonic groundwork for economic institutions, markets, and eventually the capitalist systems that define the modern world. Fire, once a practical tool for survival, transcended utility to become a symbol of control over nature, warmth, and life itself, inspiring ritual and myth that bound groups together with shared beliefs and values. The neurological substrates for cooperation and aggression, mirror neurons, the limbic system, and the amygdala, remained the dual engines driving human behavior, pushing societies toward both unity and conflict. Territorial disputes, competition for mates, and resource scarcity ignited cycles of violence, while social norms and emerging moral codes sought to contain this aggression to preserve group cohesion. These forces shaped early governance models that balanced coercion and consensus, control and collaboration, elements still visible in contemporary political and legal systems. The symbolic complexity embedded in language, art, and ritual reflected an advanced theory of mind, awareness of others' thoughts and intentions that underpins diplomacy, negotiation, and cultural evolution. Our modern institutions, governments, economies, religions are thus not new inventions but deeply rooted continuations of behaviors refined over 1,000,000 years. The bureaucratic machinery of states echoes the coordination once required to organize hunts. Financial systems mimic the resource-sharing networks of small bands. Religious doctrines distill millennia of ritualistic fire ceremonies and burial rites into dogma. Yet beneath this polished exterior, the ancient brain remains wired for survival in a world far less forgiving than ours. Our decision-making systems balance rational calculation with deep-seated emotional responses born from a prehistoric reality where threats were immediate and tangible. The tension between these forces creates much of human history's drama, progress and destruction intertwined. Understanding this continuum, from the shuffling footsteps of Homo erectus on African plains to the skyscrapers and satellites of today, reveals the persistent shadow of evolutionary legacy that governs human behavior, society, and the delicate balance between cooperation and conflict. This knowledge challenges the myth of civilization as pure progress, exposing it instead as an intricate layering of primal imperatives, biological hardwiring, and cultural innovation, each shaping and constraining the other in a never-ending dance that defines what it means to be human. Emerging from the fires of a million years past, the ancient instincts that forged Homo erectus remain encoded deep within our neural circuitry, quietly steering the course of human fate, even as civilization hurtles toward an uncertain future. Our brains, sculpted by millennia of survival in brutal landscapes, are wired for immediate threats, territorial defense, resource competition, and in-group loyalty, mechanisms perfectly suited for a world defined by scarcity and danger, but increasingly discordant with the complex, interconnected global ecosystem we now inhabit. The limbic system's ceaseless vigilance, driving fear, aggression, and tribalism, fuels modern conflicts that ripple across borders. Wars over dwindling resources, ideological clashes, and social fragmentation, echoing the territorial struggles of our prehistoric ancestors. Yet, perched atop this ancient framework is the prefrontal cortex, a relatively recent evolutionary marvel granting us the capacity for abstract thought, foresight, empathy, and self-regulation, offering a fragile but vital hope that reason might temper primal impulses and guide us through crises unseen by any predecessor. However, the pace of technological innovation, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, digital networks outstrips our biological evolution, thrusting humanity into an ethical and existential maelstrom. These technologies, extensions of human ingenuity, amplify our capabilities but also risk exacerbating inequalities, displacing meaning, and unraveling the social fabric in ways that challenge the very definition of what it means to be human. Meanwhile, the accelerating climate crisis starkly exposes the limitations of evolutionary programming, as the human tendency toward immediate gratification and tribal exclusivity clashes with the necessity for long-term collective action on a planetary scale. The struggle to curb emissions, conserve biodiversity, and manage finite resources mirrors prehistoric survival challenges, but demands unprecedented cooperation and foresight. Cultural evolution, bolstered by symbolic thought and social learning, offers a path forward, enabling humanity to rewrite the narratives of division and conflict that are etched into our DNA. Emerging insights from neuroscience and psychology suggest that fostering empathy and broadening social identities beyond tribal boundaries are crucial for cultivating the cooperation needed to confront global threats. The paradox that defines this era is stark. To survive, we must transcend the very instincts that once ensured our ancestors' survival, evolving culturally at a velocity unmatched by biological change. The story of Homo erectus, etched in fossilized bones and ancient tools, is a mirror reflecting both the raw power and precarious fragility of human nature, a legacy of resilience shadowed by conflict and competition. As we navigate the abyss of extinction risks and transformative potential, we face a profound choice: succumb to the cyclical patterns of division and destruction written in our evolutionary past, or forge a new trajectory of collective consciousness, stewardship, and transcendence. This uncertain dance between shadow and light, instinct and innovation will define not just our survival, but the future meaning of humanity itself, a testament to the enduring, evolving spirit born in the crucible of prehistory. As we peer back into the depths of prehistory, the shadows of Homo erectus reveal more than just our origins. They expose the primal blueprint that still governs much of our existence. The flicker of ancient fire that once illuminated dark caves now casts light on our modern struggles, reminding us that beneath layers of culture and technology lies an evolutionary legacy of survival, adaptation, and relentless tension between cooperation and conflict. Our ancestors' instincts, once essential for enduring harsh landscapes and fierce predators, now both enable and threaten our future in a world shaped by global interconnection and unprecedented challenges. To move beyond mere survival, humanity must consciously reforge its social and moral frameworks, transforming deep-rooted impulses into conscious choices aligned with collective well-being. This delicate balance between ancient survival mechanisms and forward-thinking innovation defines the fragile path ahead. The story of human evolution is not merely a relic of the past, but an active force, an ongoing dialogue between our biology and our aspirations. As we carry the fire of Homo erectus into the unknown, we face a profound imperative to transcend the instincts that birthed us and cultivate a future where the light of reason outshines the shadows of our origins.